The idea behind the show is simply asking guests what they would tell a stranger on a plane if they were sitting next to them and the stranger asked them for advice.
The scenery is passing very fast, but the seer is constant. The one who's seeing is the same.
Let me appreciate you for asking a question that I haven't been asked after 2,500 or so interviews over the years.
Is you have to drop the ego, which is everyone's greatest obstacle.
In 2008, Grant and I had been married for 4 years. I was pregnant with my first child. The economy was collapsing, and we were on the verge of losing everything financially.
So it's so great to be back here with Dr. Alan Lycka. And Dr. Lycka, one of the things that I like to ask with this show, because with this show, I was mentioning to you off air, we only have a short amount of time with this show. So it's not like my other show where I have an hour to ease in and stuff. This one's a lot shorter. So I jump into deep questions right away rather than build up to them. So here's my question for you. You're basically on to kind of like, I'll call it maybe your second career or your second part of your journey. For all I know, it might be your third or fourth, but that I know of your second. I'd like to ask you, what does this word or concept of legacy mean to you?
Legacy is living each day to the fullest. Each day you give back, you are creating your legacy. Your legacy comes about because you do the right things and you create things as they go along. So it's on an individual basis, giving and giving and giving. That's where the legacy comes. In the last year, I've created probably 400 syndicated radio shows. Now they're going to live on forever, and those are going to keep giving on and taking on.
Wow, I love that. And you're right. I mean, I probably should, but I never think of the fact that the one thing that will live longer than our body, assuming this is the platform that keeps on keeping on, or we have a family member that carries us over to new platforms, this work that we're doing in the interview world, in the space of podcasting, this is actually stuff that can live on. Really, there's no reason it can't live on forever. So it's funny, I never thought of it that way. So I love that you just positioned it that way.
Well, the other thing that lives on is our books. And I know you're creating a book. I created 17 books when I was a cosmetic dermatologist, and I created 3 best-selling books since I've walked away from that. So those keep living on as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, another thing is that lives on, before I go in a different direction, is the talks that we deliver. So, you've delivered some talks throughout the years, some captured on video, some probably live without being captured. The ones that live on a video, they kind of become a part of your legacy as well, even though the ones that maybe weren't captured may have impacted somebody and it becomes a part of their legacy. And then they carry that forward with an invisible ripple. But also, would you agree that those videos of your talks are part of that legacy as well?
Exactly. When I think of our presence going forward, it exists in other media. It exists in continuing media. So us living on YouTube, us living in the video space, us living out there in the auditory space. Those are places that people will be able to access us on an ongoing basis.
Amazing. So, Dr. Lycka, I want to go into a different direction now. I'd like to ask you, I don't think I've asked you this question before, but do you have a book? Like, I'm looking at a picture of books behind you. I'm just wondering, do you have a book or two that has changed your life that you recommend to everybody that you come across? And if so, what is the book and why?
I think one of the fundamental books is Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, because in there are what he calls the secrets to success, or the success principles. And I think those are the formative success principles that you've used, Corey, and I've used throughout my life to build myself to a higher level.
Absolutely. Well, and obviously, I'm a big fan and a steward of that book. We just had a flood here where we're at. we had a hurricane that created a flood into our office. And it sounds strange, but the big thing for me is I'm like, please don't ruin the books. Please don't ruin the books. That's what I was thinking. And I bought a copy of like the second printing of Napoleon, or fourth printing of Think and Grow Rich. And I was like thinking at home, like, please don't let that book be underwater. And it's so amazing to me to talk about legacy, how this book, I mean, because it's a fourth printing, that means that this book has been handled and shared person by person since 1937. And it's just crazy to think that he created this kind of legacy. And especially when you consider they say 100 million copies were sold, Alan. So it makes you wonder how many copies were really read. You know, if I have a copy that's probably been through 20 hands, I mean, it might be conceivable that a half a billion people have read Think and Grow Rich. And so I certainly say that book has impacted a lot of lives.
And you know, Napoleon Hill started it was similar to what you did by interviewing some of the greats in the world. And so that is what allows us to be great. And that's what I do on my podcast is I interview the greats in the world. So that in myself helps me to do better by stepping on the shoulders of giants.
I love that phrase. I'll tell you, the first time I ever heard a similar phrase, I think he said studying at the feet of giants, but it was Dr. John DeMartini back maybe 8 years ago in an interview. And I have to say, Dr. Like, I have a pretty good memory for stuff, but that phrase is one of those phrases that just rocked my world because it reminded me of the importance of us studying the people that have either come before us or can be mentors to us even now. And so I just love what you shared there. It's true. Standing on the feet of giants. We have that ability. And I think books is one of the biggest gateways for that. Obviously now it's audiobooks or podcasts or YouTube or what have you. Let me ask you this before I go into the main question I want to ask you. When it comes to podcasting and all the kind of new media, we like to call it, what for you, like, was it an easy transition? Because I feel like, you know, you were in a totally different career. And all of a sudden, then you're going into this expert space where you're interviewing people, you know, you're doing all kinds of different things than you were doing before. Was it a hard transition or did you literally adapt to it right away?
You know, it's funny, Corey, but the minute I stepped into this seat and this role, it became a very natural thing. And I think you've been on my show and you've noticed how natural I am in interviewing people. It's just a conversation, and it's a conversation that you have trying to bring out the best in people.
Now, I told you I had a main question I want to ask, and then I have a follow-up to that one just before as we wind down. But I want to ask you first and foremost this question that I shared with you that I wanted to eventually build to, which is what I call the passenger question. Essentially what it is if you were sitting on a plane next to a stranger, and I'll just word it this way, they leaned over and said, hey, I need some advice. I need some help. What do you got for me? What do you think you might tell the stranger on a plane?
You know, I probably tell that person a little bit about myself, and I tell them it's not what happens to you, it's what you do with what happens. So, you know, as you are in planes these days, you're frequently delayed and frustrated and going on. I would just tell that person to let it be, hang loose. Let's have a conversation. Let's chat a bit and let's take it someplace, because this is really one of those moments that you can't do anything about. So don't chill. Don't get frustrated about things you can't do anything about. Enjoy the times that you can do something about and just let it happen.
So similar question. This question I call the time machine question. I'm pretty confident you've heard this question before. I may have even asked you it a number of years ago during a past interview. Excuse me. But the question essentially is around if you could jump into a time machine and you could go back and talk to a younger Dr. Lycka, may not have even been a doctor then, but give him some life advice. And this question I know seems similar to the passenger question, but of course it's different, probably what you'd say to a stranger than yourself. What do you think you might tell a younger Dr. Lycka?
You know, I tell that younger Dr. Lycka is stay persistent. You know, there's going to be twists and turns and frustrations. Don't let the frustrations get in the way of your destiny. You know, I had to apply to medical school multiple times to get there. I had to apply multiple times to dermatology school to get there. But each one of those was a learning experience. And when I got there, I was able to get the advantages of being there. So don't get frustrated along the way. Those are opportunities to learn. Take advantage of them. Don't be frustrated by them.
I love it. So I said that was kind of I was building to the last official question. The unofficial question, which I think in some cases could be just as important, or maybe more in some cases, because we only have a little time together in the show. And people might want to know, how can I reach out to Dr. Lycka? How can I hear the show, these 400 episodes of interviews that he's done, all those kind of things. Is there a hub or a place that you normally send people if they want to learn more about either how they can work with you or listen to your everything you're putting out into the world?
Yeah, Corey, on my website, it's Dr. DRALLEN, Lycka, LYCKA.com. Please reach out to me there. There's some great information there, and you can sign up for a golden pearl a week that I really encourage you to do, because at least once a week, you'll get a golden pearl sent directly to your mailbox. Will truly make your day, and that will shape you so that you'll have a great week and a great month and a great year.
And now your show, just so we give a little plug for that, what's the, and I know the answer, but I want to ask you, what's the name of the show and where can people watch it or listen to it? Is it one of just those
My
you can
show
listen
is
to
called,
podcasts?
How to Live a Fantastic Life. There's two places you could do it. First, you could Google it and find it everywhere, but it's on my website, dralanlycka.com. And you can also find it on a network called AM/FM 24/7, where the newest shows live.
I love it. So, Dr. Alan Lycka, this has been an absolute pleasure. With your permission, I'll call it a to be continued, because I feel the conversation was far too short and we need to keep the conversation alive.
Thank you, Corey, for having me. This was really a pleasure. When I saw you on my marquee for today, I said, this is going to be a great day.
Awesome. Well, the feeling is 1,000% mutual, my friend. So thanks for being you.
Bye for now, and you be well, and hopefully you recover from that flood shortly.